to Living Local. The St. Elizabeth Hospital fire in Iowa is a book about one of the largest tragedies in Iowa's history. And here to tell us all about the piece is author Brett Grimes. How are you, man?
I'm good.
Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So your story's kind of fascinating. You're a chiropractor.
I'm a chiropractor. I'm a chiropractor by day,
a writer by night.
A writer by night, so to speak. Yeah, this was just something that I really enjoyed and decided to get into, and thought, what the heck? And
yeah, why not, man?
Yeah.
And it's your first book. But let's talk about that journey from, like, I think I could write a book. Well, why not do it?
Yeah, so that probably explains who I am more than anything, was just why not? I'm sure I can figure that out. So that's really what the process looked like. I started off just thinking, this is a really interesting story. This is something that I wanted to learn about. And I thought, if I'm going to learn about it, why don't I write that down and let others learn about it too? And
why
so that's kind of how we got, that's how we got to this point.
Yeah, and I had never heard about the story itself. But before I asked about that, I want to know, had you had like any interest in writing prior? Like, had you been doing anything like on the side?
Not necessarily, no. I mean, I've written for a couple local magazines in my job and things like that, but this was just something that, it was more the storytelling more than anything. I love talking, I love storytelling, and so putting it into book format was just kind of natural.
Okay, that's great, man. So let's talk about what the book is about, because I'd never heard this story before.
Yeah, so it's about the fire that happened at St. Elizabeth, which was what we, most of us call Mercy Hospital back in 1950. It's now what we call Genesis West. And it was a mental health institution for women. There was one for men as well. And on January 7th, 1950, overnight, one of the patients unfortunately started the building on fire. 41 people died, one of those being a nurse, 40 of them being patients. It's the biggest tragedy in the history of the Quad Cities, and it's something that, like yourself, a lot of people didn't know much about.
I had no idea.
And so it's a story that I kind of call it the best kept secret in the Quad Cities, and it was something I thought more people should hear about. So.
Yeah, so what, when did you first learn about this? Like, were you just on Google one day?
Yeah, so just about. So my wife was a St. Ambrose nursing student, and their nursing facility for the school is there on Genesis West's campus. And so I had driven by there many times as a poor college kid to drop her off for school. And I remember asking her one day, what is that little cemetery about? And she said, I think it's something about a fire that happened here many years ago. And so at the time, this doesn't predate Google, but I looked into it a little bit. And then oddly enough, I was at Genesis East. My 4-year-old daughter was in the hospital with RSV about a year and a half ago. And we were there for 4 days, and I got very bored. And so I started kind of wandering the halls, and I was down by the cafeteria, and they have this great history wall that tells the history of Genesis.
Oh, okay, that's cool.
And a part of that is there's a little blurb on the St. Elizabeth fire with a photo and a little bit of writing about it, and then there's a photo of the nurse that died as well. And so I stood there and read about it and thought, this is really interesting, this makes more sense. It wasn't exactly the story that I had been told before. And then I went up back to the hospital room, did a quick Google search, saw nobody wrote a book, and had that what the heck moment.
Why not?
I think I turned to my wife and said, I'm going to write a book, and she said, what? And here we are. So
I love that. And so how long did you have to research, and what did that process look like, I guess?
So the researching part was really telling myself the story, because again, I'm a fan of history, but I didn't know the story myself. I started writing it really before I knew how it ended. And so writing in nonfiction, trying to piece together every bit of the story that I thought mattered, starting from the very bottom, which was the history of Mercy Hospital, and that dates all the way back to the Civil War. And then to take that all the way up to 1950, when the fire started, and then bring that forward to today. So I read every newspaper article I could, anything I could find on the internet. I was lucky enough to come in contact with Cody Yeager at the International Fire Museum, which is in the East Village of Davenport. And they had some records, and so I borrowed those and thumbed through those, and those were all first-hand testimony and a lot of handwritten witness accounts of what exactly happened. And then I went through the trial. There was a little bit of a trial there, and I went through, there's probably 1,000 pages worth of that total that I went through. And then I was lucky enough to be able to interview Roy Porter, who's 98 years old.
That was my next question. I was wondering if you got to talk to anybody.
Yeah, so there's one person alive who was there that day who was actively involved in the fire, and that was Roy Porter. He was part of the Second Alarmers, which was the volunteer fire association that they had in Davenport at the time. This was the first fire that they had, and of course it was a big one. And so he was there, went into the building, helped carry a couple people out. He knew the fire chief really well, and so
that's cool.
it was really neat. And for a 98-year-old guy who remembered almost everything from that day, remembered what it sounded like, what it smelled like, stuff like that. So,
well, let's talk about how viewers can get a copy of the book here.
Yeah.
And, how can they go about doing that?
So the best way to find it is arcadiapublishing.com. That is the publisher's website. You can also find it on places like Amazon and anywhere else where books are sold. It's here in the Quad Cities as well at Barnes & Noble and Books A Million and that. So.
That's great. So is there another book coming out? Is there another one coming?
That's everybody's favorite question. I need to finish telling this story publicly, I think. I want to, the goal is to hopefully get a memorial at Genesis and that.
That's great.
And then spend some time with my kids, and then I might get the itch to do it again. We'll see. So.
Well, hey, man, I love that you just jumped in and did it, and that's fantastic. And thanks for sharing the story here today on Living Local, man.
Thanks,
really appreciate
Tristan.
it.
I appreciate it.
Thanks, Brett. For more information, you can get your very own copy of the book when you visit arcadiapublishing.com. We'll have all those details posted at ourquadcities.com.